I'm going to start recording so I don't miss any details here, but I got that motion on my notes, so I'm good there. Thanks for listening to that recording in progress message. Okay, January Treasurers Report. Unfortunately, we have our a bit of a heavy budget discussion today, so the next I don't know 30 or 45 minutes or so will really be taken up by talks of that. I'm sorry, Jessica. I know that it
That's
was a
okay.
late night. It's just one of those January
This
meetings,
is
but
easy.
yeah, hopefully it's easy. It's all pretty much good news. A couple of interesting points in here, but the January Treasurer's Report is in front of you. We opened back in December with a balance of almost $10,000, which is pretty healthy toward the end of the year for us. But you'll see that gets whittled down pretty substantially toward the end of the year last year. So in terms of deposits, last December, we had roughly $21,000 in deposits, but that's a little bit falsely inflated because of the one point I'll point out here, transfer from savings for cash flow. I had to do that because I am out quite a bit of money in terms of a few grants right now. CDOT and RTD are being slow in paying me, which is nothing new, but I had to make a transfer from savings of 7,000 to make sure we were comfortable on payroll and everything else that we needed to accomplish for the end of the year. The other deposits are pretty much normal. Our CO7 contract for a couple of months with some of Tammy's work. Our CMAQ payment from CDOT from October, it's always about that $10,000, $11,000 number. And then one of the memberships rolled in toward the end of the year, which was a little over $2,000. Our debits for the month were pretty normal. I'll point out a couple of interesting items here. The salaries were a little bit higher for this month, along with the withholdings, obviously. That's because Jean on our team ended up charging a couple of months in one to close out our e-bike grant. And RTD allowed her to do that in one lump sum. So her normal monthly salary is around the $4,500 number. It was quite a bit higher that month because we lumped a couple of months in together. Her rate didn't change. We just had to play a little cash flow game there, which is primarily the reason I had to transfer from savings. So that was that was the interesting piece there. We paid $150 for e-bike accessories. Those are helmets and cold weather gear items that are going to be reimbursed from RTD for our e-bikers that deployed in in December. And then I paid $765 for the end of the year for our 990 to get done and submitted to the IRS. So our ending balance was quite low. As you can see, it was $881. We cut it pretty close, but that's not incredibly unheard of this time of the year for us. I didn't feel great about it, but it's where we were considering we had so many invoices out. Our current checking balance as of this morning was almost 12,000, 11,930 and 52 cents. And our current savings balance is $27,423.91. As a reminder, that savings balance is really there as the local match for our 144th Flex Ride piece. We're still yet to pay that to RTD if they have not invoiced us for the end of that process yet. We're on track to pay that back sometime in Q1 once they invoice us, but we're waiting on a couple of kind of outstanding payments to come in from Amazon and some other folks, hopefully, before we get that process complete. As you can see, and I've been alluding to, our current outstanding invoices is the largest piece here, and this is not out of the ordinary, although it is higher than normal. At the beginning of the year, we have the largest number of outstanding invoices because I go through the invoicing process with all of our members and other folks. We're still out around $11,000 on FlexRide local match from Amazon and a few other folks. Some of the jurisdictions still owe us a little bit of money to cover a gap payment. And we're out 3 months on CDOT, CMAQ September, November, and December. They paid me October, but I don't know why they haven't gone back to December. So I'm out $30,000 from CDOT right now. I invoiced $44,500 worth of membership this past couple of weeks. We're closing out the e-bike grant with $42,000, roughly $43,000. What that means is it covers some of Jean's time, like I said before, but it also covers us pre-purchasing bikes so that we can get bikes in our participants' hands a little bit later into Q1 once the weather starts warming up a little bit and we can get them out on the street. We worked with RTD at the end of last year to ensure that we could lump sum pay for these bikes up front, and their money would allow us to do that. And then the bike shop will hold them and we'll be able to deploy those with the direction of the board to, get bikes out as opposed to collect so much data that we had that conversation on a few months ago. So that's the big $42,000 invoice that's out there. A couple of normal things: RTD Q4 marketing, around $4,000. Most of that this last quarter was paying for swag. I'm wearing a new Smart Commute quarter zip. We have some t-shirts. I just felt like it was time for us to get a few professional items, nothing crazy, but some nice things as we get out there and talk to the communities and businesses and stuff. So that's all in the door. And we started invoicing for our TMO support grant, which came online back in December, but they're allowing us to backdate it to October. Anyway, we've submitted the first invoice for that of roughly $4,000 for some of my time, Gene and Catherine's time. I know that's a lot. Takeaways are we're a little low on cash flow because of current outstanding invoices being so substantially high, mostly from CDOT and RTD. The memberships will roll in throughout the year.
Questions? I don't see any. I'm just looking at the debits compared to what the monthly debt amount and what we have. So if we don't get anything coming in from the 167,000, what would you normally do then? Just transfer out of savings to cover for next month until hopefully those start rolling in?
That's exactly right, Chair. And I have cash flow contingency that I've been using for a while now to kind of make that swap, so to speak. With all of these new grants coming online in 2024, some of them don't have a local match component, which is going to allow us to have a little bit quicker turnaround and easier payments, we think, from CDOT. So hopefully that problem will alleviate itself a little bit. But yeah, that's right. Transfer out of savings in order to do some cash flowing, because the money's there. It's just not being paid.
So do you anticipate those coming in anytime soon? I mean, we could probably do that for a month with transferring, but after a month, we're not really in a position, it looks like, to do it again.
I do. I mean, I've been pinging them about 2 times a week for the last 2 weeks, just to see where we are in the process, and have not heard much back. But last time this happened, we escalated it. Quite frankly, I called Karen and said, "What are we doing here?" And it got paid within a couple of days. So that's probably the next step for me.
Okay. That's all I had. I guess, is this it for this page? We have another one?
That's it for the treasurer's report, and then I can go into the more high-level budget stuff.
All right. If there aren't any other questions, I would entertain a motion to accept the January treasurer's report.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Water, you have a thumbs up. Yes, perfect. Any opposed, say no. All right, we'll accept the January treasurer's report and move on. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for the discussion about cash flow, because it is, in catching that is my biggest challenge in terms of month to month kind of accounting here, and it has been for a long time. So it's nothing new, but it is our biggest challenge. So thanks for pointing that out, Chair. I'm going to go into a discussion now about our 2024 budget. Every year we go through this at a high level, and we kind of throw some numbers out there that are pretty accurate but might change a little bit, and then we need to accept the 2024 budget from the board, or if I need to make adjustments, we can do that and accept it at a later date. Before I show you a couple of spreadsheets like I normally do, I just wanted to level set a little bit and show you guys where we are in terms of the revenues that are coming in and all of the grant projects that we have for 2024 and potentially beyond. There's a number of them. DRCOG Partnership CMAQ grant, those are done in 2-year cycles. Those are our regular way to go partnership grants. Then we also have the CDOT TMO support grant that comes in every 1 year or so and has been for the last couple of years. Those are supplemental, non-local matched flexible grant funds. It's essentially CDOT saying, we want to support the TMOs. Here's some money to go do some flexible projects as long as you can scope them and it's not locally matched. It's a really nice flexible grant dollars for us and has been a huge help. The CO7 corridor communications contract that Tammy works on, those run in kind of strange cycles. I put roughly 1 year on here. Those are focused on the CO7 transit corridor build out and kind of doing corridor wide communications in a cohesive way. We'll continue that contract into next year in a slightly different form, but it will continue. The DRCOG TDM set aside. You're muted, Tammy.
Can I say something real quick? Sorry.
Sure.
I just want to clarify the CO7 corridor. That's actually a brand new contract. Our current one ends in April, and that's a brand new one that just got awarded. That goes, the first task order goes through 1 year. So I just want to clarify it's a new one.
Yeah, new one. I guess that's why I said maybe 1 year. We had a past contract. This new one's going to be similar work, but just a new executed contract. So it'll look pretty similar in month to month as you guys see it. DRCOG TDM set aside. This was awarded to us this year. This is a 2-year grant for the FlexRide optimization study. The RTD partnership grants, those are 1-year grant processes that we were awarded to supplement both the e-mobility hubs and the FlexRide study, essentially serving as local match dollars to play those two off of each other. And then finally, we have the RTD marketing agreement, which is a quote unquote non-competitive grant for all the TMOs. Those run in 1-year cycles, and that essentially covers our time as staff for events and things like swag each year as we're out there trying to promote RTD to our kind of service area. At the bottom, there are a couple of grants that have rolled off from last year that I just want to mention. DRCOG's 144th Micromobility Grant rolled off at the end of September. That was a 4-year program and funded FlexRide and part of e-bike program. We had an RTD local grant to cover part of the e-bike program rollout, and that was that $42,000 number you saw in the treasurer's report to close out that portion of our e-bike program. The CC4CA supplemental grant was a 4-year grant for our e-bike program to make sure that we could cover some of the program costs, some of the accessories, some of the buy-in from some of the folks for a 4-year process on our e-bike program. So that's where our revenues have been coming from at the bottom and where they're going to be coming from at the top. Questions before I move into the actual numbers about this setup? I know it's a little bit complex.
So you said, Carson, that we did get awarded all of these. They're not things
That's-
that are catchy. Oh, okay.
That's correct, Kyle. Yeah, this is the exact, these are where all of our revenue streams are going to come from in terms of grants for this year. Obviously, we can overlay memberships on top of it, but that's correct. These are all awarded.
And you're going to tell us how much each of them are worth?
That's right.
Okay.
And
Thanks.
Carson, sorry, Kyle, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's all good. I just, where I was probably going to go is to say, we see these monthly budgets and where we are with our, cash in the bank, so to speak. I have to assume that as part of your financial planning, you have a full budget through the course of the year and are showing here's when the revenues are coming in, the expenses, so that we try and avoid $887 or whatever it was in the checking account.
You're way ahead of me.
Carson, can you remind me what the FlexRide optimization study is, or can we talk about that later? Just quick high level.
Sure. So DRCOG awards what are called TDM set-aside grants for TDM projects across the region. We applied for that, and the project we applied for is called FlexRide Optimization Study. It's really high level. The 144th FlexRide was based on workforce transit with a hybrid schedule, right? We needed to run actual scheduled buses along with a traditional FlexRide on-demand schedule in the middle of the day. We thought that the demand-driven hybrid schedule worked pretty well. And so what we want to do is work with RTD and local jurisdictions and businesses in the area to optimize the flex rides that are all around, not just the 144th flex ride. We're scaling that project up in a study way, and RTD has already agreed to work with us on this and potentially implement some of those changes to other flex rides in our area. So just think about it as a scaling opportunity for us to make the flex rides work a little bit better, potentially for workforce in the north.
Okay, so that would include like the flex ride that now goes up to that little patch of Broomfield at Erie Parkway and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's right. Broomfield, Broomfield, Thornton, Westminster, Northglenn primarily. There may be an opportunity to add in somebody from Longmont later, but not quite yet.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah,
Sure.
Carson, so I was say, are you going to talk more about the flex ride? I guess following up on what Lisa was mentioning, and you've probably said this in prior meetings, I just forgot. I don't have a good sense of how many flex rides are supported within our, I'll call it service area. And are we getting our proportionate share relative to other areas who get this type of funding? I think I know the answer to that last question, but
I think, well, first of all, there's 6 of them in our service area that are in Smart Commute service area. One of those, two of those are because of our work, 144th Flex Ride and the Broomfield North Flex Ride. So those have been expanded. Our argument is we want to maybe change some of those kind of amorphous blobs that are Flex Ride service areas to kind of catch better workforce development potential. Because there isn't the existing transit that we need in a fixed route situation. RTD is not bringing that to us anytime soon. To your second point, the investment's not there. So this is a opportunity for Smart Commute to maybe find a smaller scale solution and bring it to the table in a pilot situation so that they can see that it works. Because 144 Flex Ride was successful. They adopted it into their system. This is an opportunity to continue to show that. And maybe have more investment.
okay, thank you.
Sure. That's the vision, at least. So now I'm going to get into the spreadsheets. These are pretty high level. I have more detailed spreadsheets across the year. But what you're looking at here is what we go through every year. And I want to make sure we're cohesive throughout the years and what we present. So on the left column is 2023 proposed budget that I sent before you guys last year, the 2023 actual numbers, and then our 2024 proposed on the right. The red and green is just my attempt to quickly show this is either a good thing or a bad thing in terms of our budgeting from last year. And then the purple numbers on the right-hand side are new or interesting that I want to discuss. We did not bring in as many members as we hoped last year. We actually lost 4 members, but brought in two new ones. So we were net down in terms of existing membership last year. We got the same amount of Adams County local match to our CMAQ grant as we expected. Same with NADA, nothing interesting there. The RTD marketing partnership, we spent nearly all that money, but we left $500 on the table because they were going to sponsor a potential event for us that we just weren't able to pull off in 2023. We only spent $92,000 of what I had budgeted, $195,000 for our DRCOG partnership CMAQ grant. That's primarily because we had other grants on the table that we tried to spend money towards ahead of this grant because it's more structured. I expect to spend $120,000 on that grant this year with Danielle on our team, Tammy's time, and my time. We will expend every cent in that account. I had a conversation with CDOT last week to make sure that we do that before our new cycle with that grant starts in April 1st. The CO7 contract, I didn't budget anything last year because it was a little bit up in the air, but we were able to pull in roughly $7,000 to cover some of that CO7 communications corridor planning that Tammy works on for us. And we're budgeting roughly $8,500 for that in 2024 with that new contract that she discussed. The FlexRide program funds, we expected to get in, $54,592. We only got in $40,000. That's primarily because we ended up having some kind of service savings here and there with RTD, and we didn't get in as much as we kind of expected to because the work was a little bit less. It was a product of our own doing. We were able to optimize the service a little bit and save a little bit of money. So we didn't get in as much because we didn't spend as much. TDM set aside, this is that FlexRide optimization study, didn't do anything last year on it. Obviously, we expect to spend half of that grant this year, $125,000, or expect to get in and spend $125,000. The e-bike funds, we expected to get in $81,000 last year, and we only spent roughly $40,000. That's primarily because of this last piece with RTD, where we're going to purchase in lump sum the last of the e-bikes and some of Gene's time. We weren't able to deploy those late in the summer because of the data reporting requirement, and we'll be able to do that in 2024 and close out that grant process. The FlexRide Mobility Project Local Match, we expected to bring in $83,000. We only brought in $46,000. That's not totally abnormal, but we just have had a lot of trouble getting people like Amazon and some of the other private entities. St. Anthony North didn't come to the table with as much as we thought. Orchard Town Center has been challenging. They have not brought their local match dollars to the table for our 144th FlexRide and mobility projects. We expect to get in $65,000 this next year. Some of that is for the 144th FlexRide to close out that account, and some of it is for our new e-mobility hubs that we're working with jurisdictions and private partners on. So I've combined those two there to $65,000 in terms of local match dollars that are going to come in. The CDOT TMO support grant, nothing last year, but we're budgeted to spend $125,000 and get in $125,000 this year. RTD partnership grants, we didn't do that last year because they were recently awarded. We're expecting to get in $188,000 there. And I always keep in this cash flow contingency because I like to have at least 1 month's worth of things in the savings just in case. So I budgeted $20,000 here. That's $817,000 we're expecting in revenues for 2024. Any questions about this high level kind of revenues budget or comments?
I saw Lisa take her mute off. Yeah, go for it.
You have to watch that instead of raising your hand, huh? So any of these grants from your slide before, are some of them 2-year grants, but you're showing the complete revenue in 2024? Or are they just showing the year? That's what I was, because you said something on FlexRide optimization.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if that was the full grant or just one of a 2-year grant.
That's correct, Lisa. I've split them into fiscal years.
Okay.
So I've essentially split them in half if they're 2-year grants. There's a couple of those that are, like our DRCOG Partnership CMAQ grant is a 2-year grant. We're getting $240,000 over 2 years. So we're
Gotcha.
expecting to get 120. That's correct.
Can you only spend 120 this year, or could you, if you wanted, spend the whole thing in 2024?
You could. It fiscally would be pretty tough on the back end for us, obviously, but there's no requirements that you spend more or less in the first year. We will probably spend more on the TDM set aside FlexRide optimization study, and I've reflected that here in the first year because we need to purchase the upfront software that we're going to be using to conduct the study.
Okay.
So we'll have a little bit less than half on the second end.
And do all these grants run concurrent with your fiscal year, or do you have different timeframes?
All different.
Okay. We could take this offline, but we've been challenged with this at the Adams County Workforce Board because managing our federal grants at different spend rates based on our fiscal year, the grant timing. And we did, Jody has somebody who's trying to work, how do you manage that? And I'll show you that spreadsheet. It might be too complicated and, might be too much in the weeds on numbers, but it's just something I've been looking at a little bit more on a monthly basis, spend there.
Yeah, I appreciate any insight into that. I mean, I have the DRCOG partnership grants on 2-year cycles. It starts in April. TDM set aside FlexRide optimization is supposed to start in March. TMO support grant started in October. They're kind of all over the place, and I do my best to coalesce it down into a fiscal calendar year for us to just see it here today. But it's definitely not perfect, and I have better spreadsheets in QuickBooks. They're more perfect than this.
And the reason is, I mean, one of the things as a board, then from the workforce perspective, we're looking to see, is it cyclical? Like, we know that the e-bike program is probably more spent getting ready for warmer weather, right? Or, in our case, we're looking at where programs can be optimized. So that would just help us in where can we lean in if you need help in getting more money spent quicker or less.
Those are helpful thoughts. Thank you, Lisa. Anybody else?
Kyle took his mute off. He's ready.
I'm just looking at the amounts that we actually spent in 2023 versus what we're proposing to spend in 2024. That is a massive increase. And it's just a question about, do you have the, call it, people infrastructure in place to be able to execute on that significance of an increase?
It's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it because I keep staring at those two numbers for the past week and thinking that's a big number for me and our small team. The short answer is yes, and here's why. Jean's time is going to expand on our team to work on some of these grants more heavily. So she's only working roughly 20 hours a week right now. That's going to expand to a larger amount, probably 35 hours a week or so. That'll eat up quite a bit of time on a couple of these individual grants. Same with Catherine on our team. She's going to expand some of her time. Tammy's going to be working more heavily on the CO7 contract when it comes online. So from the time perspective, we're kind of expanding some of our part-time roles a little bit to make sure we're eating up that side. On the other side, that does not cover everything. Some of these costs, some of these revenues that we're going to get in here that we're going to expend are actually for capital costs. And I have not broken that out here for you, but where is it? TMO support grant, $125,000. A portion of that is for the e-bike mobility hubs. About $50,000 of that will be spent exclusively, because they're flexible dollars, on capital infrastructure around e-bike mobility, what we're calling hubs, right? Lockers, smart locks, things like that. So we don't need additional capacity necessarily to be able to execute on that, other than Jean's time expanding to bring that program to fruition. Same with the RTD partnership grant. Some of those are capital costs that are more fixed. And we will not need additional capacity necessarily to execute on those. It's just kind of a one-time cost. Does that make sense?
It does, and that's very, very helpful. So more part-time people will be working more hours, and then we've got capital buried in the numbers. So it's maybe not as dramatic as it would at first appear. That's helpful. The only other question I had, and this is a total net, I'm looking at $20,000 cash flow contingency.
Yeah.
If I love putting things in contingency, totally makes sense, but it looks like it's shown as a revenue. That's not really a revenue, is it? It's just a reclassification of other revenues that are coming in.
That's correct.
Yeah, and we might want to pop that below the line or something. Just for
No, you're
purposes.
right. You're right. My accountant hates me sometimes for doing it this way, so I should listen to her. I like to simplify things for this conversation, but you're totally right.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Any other questions? I have one question, Carson, about
Sure.
the membership, actually, and it's frustrating to hear that we can't seem to get participation from the people who actually are being benefited the most from the Flex Ride that we work so hard on. Is there anyone that we can reach out to that can help push on them? Even the city, it seems like it's mostly on the Westminster side. Can they reach out? Can their economic development team reach out? Because really they are benefiting from this. And if they want to continue that benefit, it's nice to have that partnership. Their employees are the ones using it.
Yeah, it's a good point. So I think the way I've approached that is just coming to them and saying, this is not necessarily a membership. This is a local match buy-in for a project. You may or may not care about everything that Smart Commute's doing. I think you should, but this is a local match buy-in for a bus coming to your door. So that's been my sell, and it's worked for Denver Premium Outlets and partially St. Anthony North, but not all the way. We're working pretty hard on Amazon. I know Lisa's helping me on the back end with some folks. Jean on my team has a project planning meeting with them right now, actually, that I'm not I'm not able to join. But um, long answer here to just say we're trying as best we can, but I need to do a better job of plugging you guys in, and was going to have that conversation maybe a little bit later about how we could get some help around that.
Yeah, I think, we're here for any of that conversation. Obviously, Wadi, you might have to not be in that conversation, but I think whatever we can do and to help express the need and desire and reason behind, because I know Amazon has a lot of turnover over the years with the management. I know DPO has had some changes, but it sounds like hopefully they're on board. And then I know the hospital is undergoing some changes, but I also understand that the Orchard has had some pretty significant management change, turnover. And so if we need to set up a meeting or refresh sort of why we exist here and what the purpose is and how we work, in direct benefit to them, I think any of us would be willing to participate in every way we could to help get that point across.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, whatever we can do to grow the membership, please let us know.
Yeah, thank you. We did have a good meeting with Orchard Town Center 2 weeks ago. Gene and I did, to talk about e-mobility hubs and moving the flex ride stop. Quite frankly, retail coming out of COVID is still reeling a little bit, and we're struggling to get them to pay up for things. But yeah, I need to be more strategic. It's a good charge for me this year to think that way, to use you guys as support, and I need it.
All right, moving on.
Moving on to the fund side, the expenditure side, how are we going to spend all that money? Most of it on the Smart Commute side, as you guys know, with nonprofits, is a simple in and out process. We get the grant dollars in, we spend the grant dollars. There's no funkiness to it. There's a lot of categories here. Some of them I'll go through and some of them I won't, but it's the same setup as the slide before. Last year, we didn't spend quite as much on the FlexRide and e-bike program, primarily because of the e-bike situation not being done in 2023 like we expected it to be. We were not able to deploy all the e-bikes, so we'll spend, an additional $25,000 to purchase those sometime in Q1 once we get the go-ahead from RTD to do so. Payroll, we spent a little bit more. I budgeted a higher amount last year than the year before, 210, because we were going to hire somebody. We spent 257 last year on payroll. This does include everything to do with our withholdings as well. It's all in one category here, just so you can see kind of a whole picture of what our burden is from the payroll side. The reason it was higher is because we hired somebody a little bit earlier than I thought we were going to, so we had some extra months in there. And B, primarily Jean on our team worked more hours, and we were able to expend more of her time on the e-bike program than we had anticipated. That's what adds up to that difference there. I'm budgeting a little bit higher this year, 280, because we'll have that full-time person, Danielle, on our team in for a whole year cycle. And we'll have some new additional grants with that added capacity for staff on various projects. So that's the payroll situation and the discrepancy there. Payroll expenses, I budgeted 2,000 but spent 3,235. You see, I'm only budgeting 2,500, and you might ask why. That's because last year I moved us to direct deposit, and there was a big one-time fee of like $1,000 to get that started. I thought it was worth it on the front end for me now that we have a larger team and we're all spread out working from home. That's not going to happen this year. It's just a simple $63 a month recurring charge with our accounting folks on that side. So that will be a little bit lower than it was this past year. Equipment and supplies, I budgeted 1,500. We only spent 416. I'll keep it the same this year just in case. $2,000 in mileage and transit passes is what we budgeted last year. We spent roughly that, a little bit over. I'll budget a little bit higher this year because events are back in full swing even more now than ever, and we'll be running around to different projects quite a bit. Web support budgeted 1,300, only spent 870 last year. I'll budget a little bit lower because we already have a web support guy for the year, only $1,000 to host and do the quarterly updates. Pretty good deal. Accounting, I didn't budget anything, but we did send $765, so I'll budget 1,000. That was for the 990 at the end of the year. Marketing and newsletter, I budgeted $1,000. We spent almost that, so I'll budget that again. This middle category here with no proposed and no expenditures in 2023. Those are all of our new grants, essentially kind of thrown into one category here. We're expecting to spend all of the TMO support grant next year, or this year, I should say. We're expecting to spend all of the RTD partnership grant funding this next year. The mobility projects local match, that's for part of the flex ride I talked about early and part of our new mobility projects where we need local match dollars to come to the table to kind of build some of these projects out. That 65,000 is what we're budgeting there. So we'll get it in, but then we'll immediately spit it back out. The TDM set aside flex ride optimization program costs, we're expecting to spend 75,000 to essentially cover the software and part of Gene's time this next year. That's roughly half of the grant, a little bit more than half, because that is a 2-year grant process. Those are the most complicated pieces here, and then we get into breaking down some of these other items, which I quite frankly, I don't know if they're worth our time going all the way through. Telephone, telecommunications was the same. I'll budget the same. Transforum, we budgeted 2,000, didn't spend anything. I'll keep 1,500 in there in case we want to pull out an event this year with AC Rep or otherwise. Bike to Work Day, NADA, all online. Insurance, this was an interesting one for me this year, and I'm already started shopping around. It went up pretty substantially because we had to list RTD as a dependency on one of our things, and it just bumped my premiums up. So I'm going to start shopping around outside of State Farm, and I already have to see what I can get, but I budgeted a higher amount just in case I can't find anything better. 2,400. Travel and training, didn't spend anything, but we'll continue to budget 1,500 just in case a conference pops up. Registration, events, and fees, that's in purple here because last year we only I budgeted 1,200, spent around 1,000. I'm budgeting 3,000 because the Association of Commuter Transportation, our professional organization, ACT, at the national level is hosting their conference in Denver in 2024 in August. And we expect to register every person on staff to go and then potentially do some special registrations, one-offs for board members that are interested in interesting presentations. So we'll spend a little bit more this year, and that is covered by our CMAQ grant, our existing DRCOG partnership CMAQ grant. And I've been holding on to that money for 2 years, waiting for it to come back to Denver to spend those dollars. So that's that. Board membership development. I didn't spend anything last year, even though I budgeted some. I'd still like to get us together once or twice this year to host a meal. So I budgeted $300 there. It costs us about $1,000 a year to have a storage unit, and we'll continue to do so. It's not terrible, but it's still a cost I don't really love. We budgeted $9,000 for miscellaneous expenses based on previous year's budgeting. I only spent roughly $2,000 on that last year, and I'll keep it right around that $5,000 number. Seemed like a pretty good guesstimate between the accountant and myself. And then our unprogrammed expenses to make sure that we have a balanced budget was roughly $32,000, which is, like you said before, Kyle, the 32 and the 20 is essentially our cash flow contingency numbers. They're not shown in an accounting way here, just kind of a high level spreadsheet. So questions on expenditures, they kind of match our revenues almost exactly, but there's a couple of strange items.
Any questions?
So, Jessica, I have one.
Yes.
So Carson, just because I'm in the market for this as well, you don't have to do an audit or of your records based on all the grants you're receiving?
We have not in the past, but it's always on the table. The way these things work is RTD and CDOT say at any time FHWA or FTA could approach them at the federal level and say, we need an audit of all of your CMAQ programming, and that includes us. So I have to show them my books, essentially, on the back end.
But I'm just wondering because I thought nonprofits either had to do an audit for their board to approve or have a financial reporting or review by a CPA. every
That
year.
was my
So that's
990. Yep. Yep.
Well,
That
not
was my
more-
990 process.
more than the 990. No?
Not for us. Not that we've ever had to do, or Karen and I have ever had to do in the past. That may change with growing revenues this year, but I have not been made aware of that by my tax folks. If you know something I don't, please, I'm happy to investigate. But as far as I know, that's we're kind of doing our due diligence.
We have some time. You and I have a meeting set up to talk. I've been going through an Institute of Organizational Management, so maybe it's fresh on my mind.
That's good. I appreciate that.
So
Anyone else? I don't see any, Carson. Do you have another
Thanks for
slide?
hanging with me.
Any other slides for the budget?
That's it. That's the budget. Simple revenues and expenditures. Try to keep it as high level as I can, so that we can chat about it like we did.
All right, so if we don't have any other comments or questions, I'll entertain a motion to accept the 2024 budget.
So moved.
second,
All in favor say yes.
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 Any opposed say no. All right, you have approval and acceptance of the 2024 budget.
Great. Thank you. It will change, I'm sure. It does every year, but it's a helpful target for us. So thank you. Chair, you know what? Since we're running a little low on time, I might skip our work plan refinement and move straight to the discussion of the board membership and development subcommittee, since we only have 15 minutes left, if that's okay with you.
Yep.
All right, this is a really basic slide other than just to kind of start us down a conversation road here. We, like we talked about in December, are kind of struggling. I'm struggling to keep board members engaged and on board year after year. And I have 3 vacant board positions right now, which I'm trying to actively recruit for. I'm interested in kind of private sector members. Most likely, I would love to see more folks like we've had in the past from Maxar or Amazon or some of those folks around the room. They're helpful voices for us as we try to really focus on workforce development in a transportation way. And we are interested in kind of focusing on ongoing and sustainable member partners. Maybe the one-offs are great for kind of membership support year after year, but I need more of you guys that are in the room today that are willing to support the organization, hopefully for at least a 3-year period, so that we can have some contingent or some, what's the word I'm looking for? Some continuity across the years. That's all I really wanted to say, other than just to open up the conversation around potentially forming a subcommittee. It sounds formal, but it would just be us meeting maybe a couple of times a year in person to discuss who's out there from a membership and board side.
And I'll just add in here if that's okay, Chair. I think this is something that we have a lot of opportunity with. I think we all have sort of our circles and our worlds that we work in. And, one thought that I had is, and I broached this to Carson is, can we really try and sit down and sort of power map and sort of identify, some of these private sector companies, groups, individuals, et cetera, not only to see if they can start getting interested, but also sort of refine or maybe reset a little bit of our pitch, right? Of our purpose and our meaning and what we're bringing to the table, and really just try and sit down and power map, not only ourselves and the benefits that we bring, but who's missing, right? Like who in the regional economic development world that we're missing needs to be at the table, right? From lots of different groups and entities. So I would really encourage, and I know it's a lot of work, but we try to power map the region a little bit and see who we're missing and how we can sort of reset a little bit our pitch and our meeting to these folks.
you know, Carson, with some of the other boards, we kind of talk about, you know, what specific sectors we're looking for to recruit or look out for. Is there anybody, I know you have private sector, but is there anybody in particular that you would want to see? You know, we have a lot of new types of businesses along the I-25 corridor. Is there anyone or any type of industry that you would hope to join the board?
I don't have a specific industry type, two categorizations that work best for us. Those that are most interested in maybe the sustainability space. We've had Google in the past that was interested in that. Ken was great for a long time, and that was his draw. He cared about regional transportation, but sustainability. And then on the other side, proximity to important corridors. You just said I-25 near there or near an inline. I think those are two important defining factors for private sector members, right? I think about your work at Baseline, Kyle, the importance that we work on CO7 and the potential mobility hub that's coming there, and bus service and all the advocacy we do there. There's a nexus there, and it has nothing to do with the industry. It just has to do with the kind of proximity and work that we can do to advocate for better transportation in that area. That's my take, though. Somebody else might have a different perspective.
Well, Carson, and when I look at the membership levels, you know, the gold level and the standard level, and you think about what you just said on CO7, I'm wondering if there's a strategy to have a smaller membership level that might be easier for like a local manager of, say, the Costco to approve out of their budget without having to go through corporate, but they have employees that might benefit from something at CO7 and Lark Ridge. You know, I think it's thinking strategically about, is there an opportunity to maybe get more of those smaller partners somehow that employees are benefiting from it, but for them to go ask for a $2,000 membership might be too tough.
Yeah, it's a great point. And Tammy and I just had a conversation with someone that works with us in the CO7 corridor this last week with that exact tone. We need a small business support category for folks that are interested in what we do. And I am fully open to that idea. I have no ties to our membership levels. I have no ties to the amounts. I care about it being a sustainable organization, right? And I'm opening that boundary up a little bit.
And the second part is, you know, we've been doing a lot of, as an organization, thinking about non-dues revenue, right? So are there other sponsorship levels that you could design in the region to get some more money in, non-dues wise? And maybe it's you and I brainstorming too about doing a bigger transportation forum and how much, you know, that's just a little bit more we could bring in for both of us on kind of sponsorships and attendee fees. But that would be a heavy lift in thinking about where we did it. But I think, you know, if you Smart Commute, if you could think about some other sponsorship ways of people getting their name out there on the bike stations or the lockers or something like that, might be able to bring you in some other non-dues revenue, because I didn't see that in the budget at all.
We have not done that in the past. It's a good idea, right? I mean, it's not rocket science. We just have to get a little creative with how we're bringing in the dollars. And I don't want, like I said, I don't need $100,000 worth of kind of non-tied revenue. I just need a little bit to keep us in the cash flow happy space, because I don't want it all sitting in the bank. That's not the purpose of a nonprofit, in my view.
Yep.
Well, I think also important just to look at the region and where there's, you know, blind spots in the region, right? So there's the I-25 corridor, and yes, that's the spine that we're really focusing on, but where are there other parts of the region that we also need to power map, right? There's a ton of growth in Commerce City that's going on right now, and you know, can we start getting into that a little bit further in Commerce City? So, you know, there's the focus areas, and there's the parts of the region that we're talking about every day. Yeah. Where else can we go, right? Where else are we not looking inadvertently as well within the service area. So Lisa, I love the idea of getting some sort of, you know, sponsorship revenue and some sort of outside the box ways of bringing things in, just to start getting the name out even more, right? And I think that also helps with a little bit of a easier pitch and, you know, getting out there and just more visibility. So, I mean, I would recommend that maybe a few of us sort of, you know, sit down and just sort of power map the region and power map some players and try to bring sort of like a action list or like a task list to Smart Commute, and, you know, sort of go forth and get some more members, maybe like a plan, so to say, right? But I know that Carson can't do that on his own, and maybe it just takes some brain power through some of us to really sit down and just go through and see who's missing and what we can put our efforts towards.
I think
Thanks,
that's,
Nathan.
go for it.
I was just gonna say I actually live in Commerce City, and so I'm biased, but God knows that we need all the help we can get. I live in the north side of Commerce City, but yeah, I would love to see something in this space happening in the city for sure.
Sounds
Carson,
like
you
we
have a
volunteer.
map on the website that shows the territory, right?
Yeah, on purpose, Lisa. We've had some issues in the past with where our boundary ends and starts. So I did a list of jurisdictions because my approach has been, if I split Broomfield with Commuting Solutions, that doesn't mean I don't serve all of Broomfield. We just do it in the background. That's why.
Gotcha.
I mean,
You
it's a
want one?
huge
I can
area,
send you one.
Yeah,
right?
I
It's
I think you're right,
It's
Nate.
massive.
There's a lot of opportunity, and I know that there's a lot of need going east. So
So do we, this slide here says subcommittee. Can we just put that together then and that group gets together? I mean, I hear like 3 volunteers already, so.
Yeah, that's my full nudge, right? Chair is just to maybe start and it's a formal name, but I think we just get together, like Nathan's saying, in Power Map. So would you guys all be okay if I sent out kind of a exercise and polling scheduling for those that are interested in the room, if I can get a show of hands, and then I might include somebody offline as well. But is that acceptable to the group?
yep.
Perfect. And I think school districts should be another piece of this because, you know, there's a huge, they're sucking up all of our flex rides and, you know, causing others to not be able to use them. So maybe they can be a part of the conversation.
Yeah, we have a meeting with Adams 12 next week on survey results. And we just lost our best contact there. He left, but yeah, I agree. I think I had for a long time wanted him to be, he's our sustainability coordinator, not a big title, but really impactful guy. I wanted him to be on the board, but wasn't quite right.
Even Mapleton has people that I'm thinking of in my mind that I recently met with that might be interested, and they're right along the I-25 corridor as well.
Yeah, I'm laughing because Kyle and I looked at some of the future plans for Adams 12, and there were a lot of parking lots on their plans. And I said, "Aren't these too many parking spots?"
Oh, don't.
Yes.
I'm not happy with them about that.
Well, anything that we could do I hadn't thought about the school district alignment there, or at least potential partnership. That's a really interesting idea. And I didn't realize that Jessica there, I implied in what you said, I think, is that the kids are sucking up the flex rides. Is that what's going on?
Yep. In the mornings, they use all the flex rides, so the seniors that try to get on there, or anybody for that matter, they're full. They can't get an
No
appointment.
kidding. Huh.
Yep.
I did not know that.
No yellow school bus service to a lot of these places, right? And they're using
Wow.
RTE.
those are future transit riders.
There you
Future
go.
transit riders.
It's not a
right?
bad thing.
We just got to accommodate everyone, right? So we got to accommodate the future transit riders and the seniors all at the same time.
As you said something about parking, and I was going to bring it up at the very end. If we're done with this conversation, I'll just say it quickly before we end, if that's okay, Chair.
Yep.
I think maybe some of you are aware, I keep my eye on the Capitol, but don't bring it here too much. But there's a potential bill coming to the table somewhat soon around parking minimums and eliminating some of those parking minimums at a regional level. And I'm sure you're all aware of this, but I'm keeping my eye on it from a smart commute perspective, along with a couple of other transit ridership bills that sound like they may get marked up a little bit. There's also a ballot initiative floating around out there from Coperg and Danny Katz around a potential regional transportation authority through Dr. Cog to raise money for transit in the area. He said it's able to be shared. I'm sure Nathan in the room knows something about this, but for those in the room, I will share it with you if you'd like to see it, the presentation. It's too early to do anything substantial with it in terms of stakeholdering, but he did say it was worth getting the word out to folks that were interested. So a couple of capital items that I thought I'd bring to the table at the very end there.
And the parking, depending on what that looks like, will either be supported if it's not a mandate, or opposed if it is a mandate by CML. We can't ask, state can't ask the cities or tell the cities how to implement our parking restrictions, and so we haven't seen that yet. We have a meeting Friday with CML Municipal League to discuss, I'm sure, whatever they're hearing.
Yeah, the draft I've seen is pretty mandatey, which I'm sure will get changed, but yeah, just a continuation of last year's housing bill debacle.
Yep, so they're just breaking it up into chunks this year so that it's harder to deny the whole thing.
Totally.
Well, and then, I mean, Priola's bill about a statewide transit pass incorporates all the good things for the Clear the Air ride. So we'll see what happens there. So,
And
Yeah.
so will you have data coming up maybe, I don't know, half the way through the year, the second quarter, about RTD's new fee structure and what kind of ridership, if there's any increase?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to have RTD come to this group and give a presentation around April or May when they have some data. Although Q1 ridership for transit is never great because of the weather. So I'll chat with them about that. But I'd like to have them come and give a presentation, or at least send me one so I could give it to you guys. That's the idea. Yeah, we're pushing that thing heavily right now, as heavily as we can. Transit's cheap.
Will we get a new representative since Troy's leaving, or how does that go? I guess he's not leaving RTD.
Not leaving RTD, so there's the potential he could stay on under the RTD hat. Ongoing conversation there. If any of you talk to him, please push him to do that. I would love to have his voice in the room, but I know he's still, he's tied down at the Capitol and everything else right now. So this becomes a second priority, which I totally understand. It's 9:30.
That $88 regional pass invoice in January felt great instead of a $200+. So it is cheap and great. Super efficient. Yeah.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. Bus was 3/4 full today, just
Wow.
Qualitatively speaking.
Oh, that's better than 1/4.
I also passed a person on rollerblades on the Cherry Creek Trail, so that's a new one.
All right, everyone. Thank you.
thanks.
End it
Take
right
Thanks
care.
for your time, input. Appreciate it.
Hey, Carson, real quick before I jump off. Did
Let me
you want to?
Hold on.